Okay. 3, 2. And now we're here with new friend of the show, Bill Golliher. Welcome to Earth Station One, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, well, absolutely. Welcome to the station. For those people who may not be familiar with you and your work, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I am a writer and artist for Archie Comics. I've been doing it for, I guess, since 80, 88, 89, so quite a while. But I used to work in the Archie office, but now I'm freelance and doing stuff. And so anyway, do various covers, stories, writing and penciling.
Awesome, awesome. How did you get started with writing? And I mean, had you always, even from like, an early age, wanted to write
Yeah,
and draw?
yeah, I did, and I always I grew up reading like the Harvey stuff. I mean, started out with like the Harvey stuff and the Archie stuff, like a lot of people, probably do. And so when I started drawing, I would draw from the Archie comics to the Harvey comics. So my style kind of went that direction. And
Mm.
so eventually, I wound up. I was going to college, and I'm from Louisiana originally, so I was going to college there. And the direction, and I was majoring in journalism, minoring in art. But the art programs there, this was like early 80s. So everything was like more abstract and that kind of thing. And then we had like a guest instructor one semester. He ended up doing 2 semesters, but his name was Marcus Swayze, and he did like a lot of the Marvel family stuff back in the early 40s after he got out of World War II, which was kind of like, I guess, a common thing for a lot of those early artists. They did their stint in World War II and then started drawing comic books. But at that time, he was probably in his 70s, and he was retired from his art director job at a local paper plant there. And so he started teaching this class at the college. And so, taking that class, learning kind of the basics of really how comics work and are put together, that kind of encouraged me to do the Kubert School thing. So I ended up there.
Oh,
And
wow.
because my style lended towards the Archie style, that's kind of direction I went in. And Dan Parent and I were in the same class. We weren't in the same first year together, but second and third year. And so then third year, Victor Gorelick, who used to be the editor of Archie, who's passed away since, but he was the editor at that time. He came in to check portfolios or look over portfolios. And so that's kind of how I started. I ended up taking a job when I got out of Kubert School in '87, doing Peanuts, Charlie Brown Snoopy licensing in Kansas City, and doing Archie stuff freelance. Dan went ahead and was working in the office, and I was doing freelance. And then I think '89, I made the move back across the country again, and then started working in the Archie office.
Wow.
So
That's
how it
that's pretty
started.
incredible though, right off the bat, like,
Yeah, it was
working for a major
it
publisher
was a
like
lot
that.
of fun. And so I just kind of like I said, I grew up reading them, so I was real familiar with the characters and stuff.
Hmm.
And so and my style kind of lent itself. And then but it's funny because I guess it's this way with anybody, but when you look back at that early stuff, you're like, oh my goodness. You see, how you can improve. But I guess Victor must have saw something in it because he gave me a chance from the start, which I really greatly appreciated. And I think one of the
Hmm.
first stories I wrote, we're going to talk about Sabrina later, but it
Yeah.
was the Sabrina story. So because
Oh,
I always
cool.
was kind of seeing wearing my Bewitched shirt, so I was always into
Yeah.
like Bewitched, and then when I'd never read Sabrina in the comics, but you know how the comic books always have like the previews of what the Saturday morning cartoons were going to be for that year, like every back in the late 60s, early 70s, they'd always buy out like the centerfold of the comic book and have like the Saturday morning lineup or whatever. So I remember
Hmm.
seeing I think it was 1970 or 69, whenever it was, that Sabrina show was going to be on. So that's kind of how I was introduced to Sabrina. So then I started reading the Archie comics after that with Sabrina in it.
I have to ask. I mean, I know, like you said, I know we're gonna really focus on Sabrina in the next segment, but
Yeah.
she was created by George Gladiator and Dan DeCarlo. Did you
Right.
get a chance to work with either one of those
I
two
did.
gentlemen?
Well, George Glatter, he lived, I think he was living in California at that time. And so we would get his scripts, and I would get one of his scripts to draw or whatever. And I think I met him one time. He came in the office. I didn't meet him there. He was a really nice guy. And Dan DiCarlo, though, would come in like every week to drop off his artwork. And so I'd get to, talk to him, and he would actually like go over Dan Parent and my stuff, and give pointers and suggestions, and even did a few stories where he would do like, he was really, he was always really busy. So he would do like the layouts, and then, Dan or I would tighten those up. And so that was a real learning experience, because you kind of see how he lays out a page and all that kind of stuff. So, and then there was a stint, for some reason I remember it was during the Gulf War, whenever that was, but Archie kind of had expanded out of their one office. So they stuck me and Dan Parent and Dan DiCarlo like in one off, because I guess Dan DiCarlo wanted a place to come into to get out of the house for a while, because I guess maybe he worked better, but he might have regretted it, because he wound up in the office with me and Dan Parent, and we did a lot of talking too. But like 90, sometime around there or something. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome.
I've met Dan as well. I had the pleasure of meeting him, and yeah, he's a great guy. But I can understand. Yeah, he's a chatty guy too.
Yeah.
But it looks like you guys have a lot of fun while you're. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
outside of work. So I think that translates to what you guys do inside the books.
Yes, that's true. Yep. And then it's always, and lots of times with stories, like, I'll think of something that actually happened, and then make a story out of that, which works well sometimes. I guess kind of like a comedian would, you like take something from real life and then just try to figure a way to make it, maybe exaggerate it a bit, and then you come up with like a pretty good story.
The Archie style is one that I don't know that there's a lot of leeway. And maybe you can relate to that as well, or share with us that, because it seems like, I mean, they had the template that I think was Bob Montana was first, and then Dan DiCarlo kind of went and reshaped it, like kind of, and then all of a sudden, like, well, after Dan, and rightly so, because Dan was doing amazing work, everything just sort of had to look like Dan's work, right?
Yeah, that was kind of the house style at the time. I guess it still is to a certain extent. So, I mean, you'll see different takes on it. And I think maybe now they're more open, to different looks, because you see like the bite-size Archie stuff, which has like more cartoony little version of the characters, and just different takes on it. And of course, when they do alternate covers, people, other artists do alternate covers kind of with their take on the Archie characters. So I think they're more open to that now. But as far as the way I understand it or see it, is like the digests tend to be the ones that are still going to be the classic style and the classic look and all that.
Does that, I mean, do you feel restrained by that at all? Or, I mean, it seems like
it
seems like someone like Dan Parent like flourishes, but
I feel it's like comfortable kind of, because it gives you something to shoot for and what you're aiming to do. So I always like Dan DiCarlo would always do these wild things, like in the little things in the corner of the panel, you see like like a dog doing some, silly little dog or something, and I like to do more of that kind of thing, but usually I'm too busy trying to make sure all the characters are there and looking right, and don't add those little flourishes. So when I really get into it, then I can do more with that. So I like when I can get into a zone with the story and just feel like it's really flowing.
So many characters in the Archie universe. Are there
more every day?
Yeah, it's true. I think you're right. I think they're actually introducing one this month for Sabrina, a rival of hers. After 60 years, she's finally getting a rival.
The new Archie encyclopedia.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, the who's who and who's what.
Are there any in particular that you have a fondness for, or you have connect?
I mean, I like because I grew up with it. I like the classic group, of course. So that was always my favorite. And I mean, I don't mind adding the new people. but it's just the point where I feel like you get a lot of characters in the story. But I mean, but that's part as a writer. You make it work, and so you'll just have a few here, a few there, but getting everybody in there.
Mm-hmm. And have you had chances to go outside of Archie?
Um, I did some stuff with Dan did a stint for he worked with Felix Comics that was back in the 90s, I guess, or late 90s, early 2000s, doing that on the side. And I did some stuff when he was working with them doing that. And I've done like a few, and he and I did a couple things together. Like there was Archie let us do like a book of the Carnies, which is some characters we created, circus family characters. And then we did our own publication of that, a couple of issues. And then his Die Kitty Die does with Fernando Ruiz.
Yep.
We did a couple of things in that.
Great stuff. Great stuff.
So yeah, it's been fun. But I don't know. To me, it's just that's a lot of hard work. If I can like flip and draw with characters I know, I'm satisfied.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, if you're good at it, right? Like,
I guess, or maybe I'm
if
lazy,
it ain't broke, don't fix
it.
it, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But good stuff. Well, now that we found out what you've been worked on in the past and what you're working on, I guess we'll see what how you go in the Geek Seat. So,
Okay.
Mike, I think he's ready for the Geek Seat.
All right.
Find out what he's passionate about.
Yes.
Uh-oh. Well, Bill's man of many layers. You could tell already. So this should be really interesting to see where he fits in and everything with this.
Okay.
All right. So, Bill, you ready for your first question in the Geek Seat?
Okay.
All right. Your first question in the Geek Seat is a simple one. What is your favorite geek out moment?
My favorite geek out moment, I guess that would have to be my first year at Hubert School. One of my first teachers, and see, like I said, I mostly read like the Archie stuff, Harvey, and then I got into like the DC stuff because I didn't get the Marvel stuff because you had to like buy the next issue because they all continued. And so I was cheap, so I get DC because they usually wrap up in one issue. So I did read DC stuff, but and I didn't read like a lot of classic stuff. But one of my first teachers was Al Williamson, who did a lot of that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Stuff, Flash Gordon, and Star Wars, the first Star Wars or the Star Wars strip, and several of the Star Wars early issues. But anyway, he was one of my first instructors. And so the class was method and materials where he was supposed to teach you how to like use different materials or methods, or no, narrative art. That's what it was. But he was going to show us all how to use a brush to ink with. And like nobody in that class had used a brush before to try to ink. So, we'd all use markers or whatever. And so, I had done the assignment and it looked like crap basically, but so then he comes around, he's like looking at him, and I'm saying something about, how difficult it was. Well, he's like, well, let me show you. So he takes my brush, the Winsor Newton number 2, I think, or 3, and he doesn't have any pencil lines, but he starts like drawing all these characters on a blank piece of Bristol, like Flash Gordon, dinosaurs, and all this stuff. I mean, I have it hanging up. It's just like amazing. But anyway, so I was just like amazed. And then like afterwards, and then the whole class ended up around my desk because he had like, picked me to start showing how to do this. And I think one kid in another class even like offered to buy it from me like later in the day or something. I was like, no, I'm not selling this.
Wow.
And then, I got to be, friends with him, and several of the other students friends with him. And so we were like invited to his house, and he had like a 16 millimeter projector and like theater seat. So he let us watch, he showed us like the I can't remember what the year was, but whenever the original version of King Kong.
Oh, right.
At his house, like on this 16 millimeter projector. It was just really cool. So, and some of that stuff I didn't appreciate till later, because when you're young and you don't really like, it's just like something to do. But then the more you learn about the industry and the history of it, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. That
That
is
is
cool when
awesome.
you get that, just to see that and have him sitting at your desk working on showing you how
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
so.
and just seeing that talent just pour out of that brush, and
He's
like,
like,
how is
see how easy it is?
that?
You're like,
Yeah,
no, it's
yeah.
not.
Oh, and then
See,
like,
kids, yeah.
and I have ink stuff with the brush, but now I usually do it digitally just because I hate the mess. But
Oh yeah.
I know
I
it sounds
remember
wrong,
the
but
days of using a rapidograph to ink things. I hate
yeah,
that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I guess that'd be
What
my geek out moment.
let's look at the other side of that though. What was
Okay.
your most disappointing geek out moment?
Oh, my most disappointing geek out moment. Let me think. Okay. Well, I, I did have another teacher who I won't name, but he did this comic strip, and all he would do is just like work on his comic strip in class, and he would give us an assignment and just say, if we had any questions, he'd help us with it. But he really wasn't that. That was a little disappointing. But so, and there's probably been other geek, moments too. But I would say that was kind of a disappointment because I mean, not that it was a comic strip I was that familiar with, but it was like, you always think that's kind of when you're a young cartoonist, you think that's the pinnacle is having your own comic strip, and that you'll be helpful to others that are trying to get in the business. But it was more like, I don't know, I'm just here to pass time.
Oh, ouch. Ouch, ouch,
Yeah.
ouch. What geeks you out the most?
Geeks me out the most. I would say probably that. Um, if I go to a convention, like if there's celebrities there, like I always feel a little standoffish about like meeting them or saying something to them, and so I don't know, just somebody you see on TV just seems a little weird to try to like. It shouldn't be, but for some reason it is, or even like artists that like when I did the panel at DragonCon with Michael, like Frank Cho was on the panel, and I had never met him before, and that was really cool. I was sitting like next to him, and he's talking about his stuff and everything. And this was like 2019, right before COVID. I had done like a comic for India Comic Con, and I had no idea. But then like they contacted me like a couple of weeks before and said, "Can you come to India for this?" So, because for the Comic Con, since I did the Archie story in the book, and so I did, and there I was with Bernard Chang and Chad Harden, so it was cool meeting them and being around them. People in the industry I might not have met otherwise. So that was really cool.
No, that's a pretty darn awesome though.
Yeah,
quick aside to that, I've always been curious because I've always heard that a lot of times, like the comics that like the Disney comics, Karl Barks and whatnot, were more popular in Europe than they were in the States. Do you find that with Archie as well?
Archie is really popular in India and really popular in Canada. And
Wow.
I don't know if it's, the sales might not be as high as they were in the States, but probably by demographics, like percentage, they probably are higher there than, here. But we might have total sales better here because of, population or whatever.
Oh, sure.
That's
But
interesting.
yeah. I mean, it was like,
because Canada doesn't even have that big of a population.
I know, yeah, but I think I only did one con in Canada. I'm trying to remember where it was, Toronto, I think, years ago. But like, Dan Parent does them a lot. He lives up in Pennsylvania and he does those a lot. And he says they're always like, big shows and do well. So there's a lot of Archie fans up there. And India, I was, like when I did the India Con, there was a lot of kids, that knew Archie and said kind of what we hear at the cons here is like, the parents will grow up on Archie and or the grandparents, they'll introduce it to the kids. It was the same thing in India. Like the parents or kids or grandparents had grown up reading Archie and they introduced the kids to it and they really enjoyed it.
Wow, that must be their like window, as apart from the movies and stuff, TV, like that's their window into what
I
America
think
is,
so.
right?
Yeah. I mean, and two, the way I always kind of thought of Archie was like when you're a kid, like before you're a teenager, it's like what you think being a teenager is going to be like. And then after you're a teenager, I think it's like a reminiscence kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense. Actually, that really does.
Yeah.
What turns you geek off?
My geek off would be, um, let's see, what turns my geek? Oh, too much of anything. I don't know, like if something's overkill, like if somebody's like too excited about something, I don't know, that could damper me. I don't know. I have my limits.
Oh yeah, of course. That
Yeah,
totally makes.
yeah.
What fictional character would you like to meet the most?
Fictional character would I like to meet the most? Uh, hmm, 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 hmm. I think the 66 Batman, maybe, because you wonder, like, here's this playboy, and why is he going to the trouble of crime fighting and everything? You know, he's not as crazy as the modern Batman or as dark. So it might be interesting to meet that Batman and just kind of see how he ticks and what's going on, and just get an idea about all that kind of things.
No, totally makes sense.
Yeah,
And you also want to. You also want to see.
I like that time period, so it's a cool
right
time period.
Oh, sure.
Plus he's not going to grab you and be like, I am vengeance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
No, he might actually ask you to do a Batusi or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So, and also, if you meet Bruce Wayne, a Bruce Wayne who wears an ascot, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yes.
So, can't be too bad.
No.
What fictional character would you not like to meet?
I don't care for Deadpool. I don't know why, but maybe it's just because I'm not that big a Ryan Reynolds fan, but I don't know. It just seems a little too far out there for me.
You run across so many at conventions.
Oh God, yes.
Go to something. Yeah. And I'm not. I mean, whatever somebody likes is fine, but just for me, and it's just my feeling.
Nope, totally makes sense, actually. What is your favorite geek word, phrase, quote, or pose?
I don't know if I have a favorite geek word, quote. I don't. What about you guys? Do you have something that maybe it'll trigger if you tell me what yours is?
A lot of people go live long and prosper.
Oh, okay, that kind of thing.
Or the hand symbol, or the superhero landing, stuff like that.
True. Okay. Yeah. I guess the live long and prosper has been around a while. So, but yeah, and I can't think of. I'm sure there's a modern equivalent of that too, but I can't think of it right now. But that might. Yeah, I guess like you said before, I could maybe just overkill on any phrase would kind of do it for me.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That totally makes sense. What is your ideal geek occupation?
I think it'd be cool to grade comic books because, just to kind of, you're probably wearing gloves, but just to get your hands on those classic comic books and check the condition and all that. I just think that's really cool. And then I had met some people at Dragon Con that actually authenticate signatures, which I never thought about that before. But I guess that's a gig too, where you're authenticating these artists' signatures, So and I'd see them go to like somebody's table that they were authenticating to make sure it was their signature. And I thought that's kind of cool.
Wow,
that would be interesting because wait, nope, this is a fake. This is not the real
thing.
I
know, yeah. I don't know if they're running across any fakes, but I guess it would happen.
Exactly. That would be awesome. That's pretty fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing until I was there, and they seem to be being pretty successful with it. So I guess a lot of people were interested in getting their signatures, verified, or I don't know if they're graded or whatever. But I thought it was kind of a nice.
What's so strange to me about that too, though, is that, because I've had the privilege, and I do think it's a privilege when anybody asks for me to sign one of my books, right?
Right.
I do not try to make them consistent at all. I kind of like, so I if anybody was to look at my signature to see if it was authentic. I don't know. I mean, I would imagine that there's some things they could probably look at, but I'm like, I don't like try to make it consistent with every time I sign a book.
Right. I have 2 L's in my first name and 2 L's in my last name, so I usually stack my L's. That's what gives me away. But other than that,
yeah, it's also depends on how sober you are when you're signing,
true.
or, and everything. It's like, oh, wait. And if these authenticators could look at it and go, oh, he had a little bit of Jack Daniels that day.
Yeah,
exactly.
That works.
So that's pretty awesome, man. What geek occupation would you not like to do, though?
I don't think I would want to be the one to like book people at a convention, because I just wonder if you call like these big names and say, could you come to our, are they going to ask like certain demands or something? I don't know. It just seems like that would be a little not that fun to have to, if somebody was like a prima donna or something. I don't know. Maybe
I've heard about some of these writers.
I thought I'd heard about some too. Yeah. So yeah.
I was gonna say, Bill, you make it difficult for them?
No, I but this is the first time I went on a Dragon Con. I mean, I went like 20 years ago, but it was nothing like it was this year. And I just got a kick out of like just watching everything, all the costumes and like the hotels, the craziness. It was just like a blast, just like watching it.
I love it. Yeah.
No, I totally understand that. And it's funny too, because it's like, for me and Mike, it basically is all they have to do is ask, it's not, we're not that difficult, writers.
Yeah, me too.
Exactly. So,
but yeah, I mean, imagine, like you said, there are some, prima donnas out there. And if you had the job, I would be kind of like, do you want to come to the show or not? I don't know.
No, exactly. So, I've heard people, oh, we need to have this, this ready for them. They have to, fly them in. They have to have this waiting for them in the hotel room, and this
M&Ms.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah, right.
I've heard about the green M&M thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wise tale.
That's Bendis, right? That's Bendis,
exactly.
right?
Of course, it has to be Bendis.
That's all.
All right, Bill, you ready for your final question?
I am.
This is for everything.
Okay. All right.
You didn't even have to hesitate.
I am. Give it to me, boy. Yeah. What is your ultimate geek fantasy?
Ultimate geek fantasy. Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought about this one before. From childhood, it was always like finding that which, it gets more impossible every year, of course, but finding that copy of Action #1 at like some estate sale or something, I just always thought that would be really cool, because when I was a kid and it was like $10,000 for Action 1, I was already thinking like, oh, how cool it'd be to find this, but I guess that would be my ultimate geek fantasy. Now, I did have a friend that found like Showcase, I don't know if it's Showcase #1, the first appearance of the Flash, like at a antique shop, and the woman didn't know what it was worth, and she was kind of like, kind of giving him a hard time because he was he felt she was kind of like looking down on him because he's buying a comic book. But then he ended up, I think he paid like $10, but then he put it on eBay and sold it for a couple of grand, so he got the last laugh. I don't know if he ended up doing it or not, but I suggested he should like print out the like auction completed page and send it in a card to the woman at the at the shop, just kind of say, thanks.
Yeah. Here's a $50 Starbucks gift card for you, or something like that. Thanks, man.
It seemed like she was kind of giving him the thing like, why are you buying comic book?
All right.
Oh God, when I used to have my comic book store, when we used to buy collections at yard sales and stuff, we were always looking for that diamond in the rough and everything.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that is the ultimate geek dream, or one of them.
Yep, exactly. Well, Bill, I've got some great news for you, my friend. Okay. You've made it through the Geek Seat. Congratulations. Mr. Mike Gordon, tell the young man what he's won.
You have won a lifetime subscription to the ESO network, a value easily worth $56.01.
Wow. Ooh. Okay. Well, that's $56.01 a value I didn't have before.
Yeah. Well,
it's station money though.
It's station not, currency. It drops dramatically as the closer you get to Earth.
So So does Bitcoin these days.
You know, so
it's still worth more than
Bill,
Bitcoin.
you're
There
going
you
to get
go.
one of these great Geek Seat magnets because of
All
it.
right.
So thank you.
That I can use.
All right. Well, very awesome. Well, we know you're sticking around for the next feature when we're talking about Sabrina and her 60 years with us. So
Yep.
I guess, Mike, we'll take a break.
That's great. Let's take a quick break and we'll be back in a moment. Boom. And that's it for that segment. Yay.
Cool.
That was painless.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Mark